The path you never take twice in the highlands of Tanay, where fog sits low over the trees, and the wind hums like a forgotten lullaby. There is a path known only by the old hunters, and the reckless teenagers who challenge each other for thrill. They say it leads nowhere, and returns you to the same spot, no matter how far you walk. A circle made by something not human. Leto was 17, loud, fearless, always testing the edge of danger. He had heard the stories about the path where the Tikbalang walks tall as coconut trees, face of a horse, eyes like burning coal, legs bent like broken branches, and a voice that mimics anyone you know. One night, after a dare from friends, Leto went alone, brought a flashlight, a pack of cigarettes, and his phone, determined to record everything. Prove it was just a trail in the woods, nothing more. He entered before midnight, followed the narrow path between thick trees that leaned too closely, blocking the moonlight. Every few steps he marked a tree with a scratch, just like his grandfather taught him when hunting to find your way back. The forest grew colder, deeper, quieter. No crickets, no frogs, only the crunch of leaves under his shoes, and the sound of his own breath. Then he heard it, footsteps behind him, slow, heavy like hooves on mud. He turned, saw no one, flashed the light, nothing, just trees. He walked faster, the sound followed, never close, never far, always the same pace, no matter how fast he moved. He checked the trees for his marks, but the bark was smooth, like it healed itself or never existed. Then a voice called from behind Leto, "Yui na anak, gabay na." It was his mother's voice, but thinner, softer, like it came through a cracked radio. He stopped, heart pounding. His mother was home, sleeping. This voice was wrong, too sweet, too calm, too perfect. He whispered a prayer, gripped the small pouch of salt in his pocket. But the wind blew it from his hand, scattered it across the trail. Then the trees began to shift, leaning forward like they were listening or watching. Ahead he saw light flickering like a fire, and a shadow sitting beside it, tall, long-limbed, unmoving, head too high, neck stretched. Like it was searching the stars. He hid behind a tree and held his breath. The air grew thick and warm like breath against his face. The shadow turned slowly, revealing a smile, two wide lips curled backward. And in the glow of the fire he saw horse legs bent and twitching hooves pressing into the dirt, and eyes that didn't blink. Then it spoke, "Nana ka pa sa tawag, ko bata hindi pa ako gudam piro salamat, sa bisita Leto." Ran, heart bursting, legs numb. The path twisted under him, trees closed in, and the fire vanished behind him like it was never there. But the voice followed, not loud, just enough to stay in his ear, repeating his name again and again, like a song from something that never forgets. He stumbled onto the highway before dawn, shoes torn, clothes covered in dust and mud. And his friends found him sitting on the roadside, staring at the trees behind him, eyes wide, lips trembling, unable to say what he saw. He never returned to that part of Tanay, never walked alone at night, never laughed at stories. The Tikbalang again, now the locals say, when the fog gets too thick and the wind too warm, stay off the trails, don't follow lights, don't answer voices, and never ever walk that path twice. Because the Tikbalang waits for those who don't believe, watches those who mock, and always remembers the footsteps of anyone foolish enough to walk into his woods. The one who ties the wind, they say, in the mountains of Nuva Ecija, where the wind moves like it has hands, and the trees grow in circles, there lives something old, older than the land, older than the prayers people forgot to say, something with the face of a horse, the mind of a man, and the body of a shadow, stretched too thin by time. His name was never said out loud, only called the one who ties the wind. Because when he walks, the breeze knots itself around your feet, and you cannot leave until he says so. Nardo was a hunter, never believed in old stories, never listened when the elders warned him to keep his shirt inside out or avoid the path lined with crooked trees. He hunted wild pigs up the hill alone while the others stayed low and safe. And on one cloudy afternoon he climbed higher than usual, chasing something. He swore he saw a shadow that moved like an animal, but stood like a man. He followed it deeper, past a tree shaped like a hand and a boulder cracked clean in the middle. And as he walked, the wind slowed, then stopped, then reversed, brushing against his face from all directions like it was confused or being pulled by invisible strings. He looked back, saw only trees, looked forward, saw the same trees again, then realized his footprints were gone. He walked faster, heart pounding, then slower, then faster again. But the path never changed no matter where he turned it led back to where he started the same vine, the same dead crow, the same broken branch. Then he heard hooves not galloping, not running, just walking slow, heavy. Steps that made the earth throb, and from the trees came a figure towering wide shoulders, narrow waist, legs, bent backward face, long with eyes black as oil, and a mouth too human to belong to the beast. It did not speak at first, only stared, as if deciding something, as if measuring Nardo's soul. Then it raised one hand, long and thin, with ropes of hair hanging between its fingers, and pointed at him, and the air grew heavy like rain was about to fall. But nothing came. The creature finally spoke, its voice like metal. Dragging across rock you stepped where no name should echo, you walked where no breath is welcome, you belonged to the circle now. Nardo ran, tripped, fell, tried to scream. But the air had weight like water, like his voice couldn't float in it. And from the trees dozens of horse eyes opened, glowing, not bright, not warm, just watching. He fell unconscious, woke up 3 days later at the edge of the mountain, clothed inside out, with strange knots tied around his legs made from his own hair, and pieces of vine and mud shaped like fingers. The albulario said he had been taken by a Tikbalang, said he was lucky to return, said the knots meant the creature marked him for later, not to eat, not to kill, but to own. Since then Nardo never entered the forest again, never walked alone, never whistled after sunset, and never laughed when horses cried in the night, because he knew some horses don't run, they wait, and some winds don't blow, they follow. Now people say when you feel lost without moving, when your compass spins and the wind wraps around your chest like arms holding tight, it means he's near, watching, choosing, and tying your soul slowly into his path. He who waits at the curve along the twisting mountain road of Quezon province. There is one curve so sharp and steep that drivers lower their speed and passengers hold their breath. Locals call it licking dilim, because every time the fog rolls in, something stands at the side of the road, tall, unmoving, not waving, not walking, just waiting. Drivers who see it say it looks like a man at first, but with a long face, dark fur clinging to its arms, and hooves where feet should be. Its eyes shine not with light, but with memory, as if it sees the road and everyone who's ever died on it. Joel was a delivery driver used to long drives and night roads. One rainy evening, he took the mountain path, trying to make up for lost time. Radio off, windows fogging, tires sliding slightly on wet pavement. As he approached the curve, his lights flickered once, twice, then cut out completely. And in the silence he heard hooves tapping lightly behind him. He looked in the mirror, saw only fog rolled down his window to hear better. Then suddenly the air grew still, no rain, no wind, no sound, only breath that wasn't his echoing near his ear. He stepped out, flashlight in hand, but it wouldn't turn on. Even his phone screen stayed black. And as he turned toward the road, he saw it, the figure at the curve, head too high, shoulders hunched, legs bent backward, steam rising off its skin. Though the air was cold, it didn't move, just stared. And as Joel stood frozen, he noticed the curve ahead was gone. Only trees, now only vines blocking the road, as if it never existed. He turned. Around, the truck was gone, the road was gone, and the only thing he heard was the sound of hooves circling him slow and steady, and the whisper of a voice speaking his name not once, but over and over in different tones. Some sounded like his mother, some like his wife, some like a stranger asking for help. He shut his eyes, dropped to the ground, prayed every name he knew, and suddenly the wind returned, the trees shifted, and the sound stopped. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the truck, headlights on, engine running, curve. Still ahead, but a large hoofprint pressed deep into the mud beside his door. He drove without stopping, never took that road again, never worked another night route, never spoke of what he saw until years later when someone else told the same story word for word, and ended it with a warning: if you drive past Lickingdillum and see someone standing tall and still by the road, do not stop. Do not blink, do not breathe too loud. Because if the Tikbalang chooses you, he may let you go once, but never twice. And if the fog follows you home, sleep with your shoes upside down and your shirt inside out, because some roads are alive, and the one who waits at the curve never forgets a scent once smelled. The Tikbalang who waited at noon in the middle of Cavite. There's a stretch of land where the grass never grows right, where the wind goes silent at noon, where even birds fly high to avoid casting shadows on the ground. The elders say it's where the Tikbalang rests not at night, but during the brightest hour when people believe nothing bad can happen. It was a place Maris passed daily on her way home from school. A narrow dirt path lined with mango trees, thick roots breaking the earth uneven. She always walked quickly, never looked at the trees, never picked the fallen fruit. Her Lola once told her never disturb a tree that hums when the wind is still. But one hot day after exams, she was walking alone. The sun was high, the wind stopped, and from the corner of her eye she saw a mango fall, not from a branch, but from thin air. It landed, gently rolled to her feet. She hesitated, then picked it up. And in that moment, the shadows around her shifted. The sound of hooves echoed on dry soil, even though there were no horses in the area. And the leaves above her head started to twist in a spiral without wind. She looked up and saw a figure among the trees, tall, with knees that bent the wrong way, hair that hung like black ropes, face long and stretched, eyes glowing faintly gold, and a wide grin that didn't move. It didn't speak, it just watched. And when she dropped the mango, it nodded slowly, then stepped back into the shade and vanished like smoke, disappearing in water. When Maris got home, her shoes were muddy, even though the path was dry, and her arms had scratches she couldn't explain, shaped like vines or long, thin fingers she tried to forget. But every day after that a mango appeared in the same spot, even when no trees were near, even when no one passed by. She began to feel watched. At noon her reflection in puddles stayed still, even when she moved. And once she swore she heard hooves on the roof during lunch. The albulario said she accepted a gift from something that doesn't forget, something that waits patiently. Said the Tikbalang had chosen her not to take, but to follow. He gave her salt ashes and a red thread to tie around her waist, told her never to return to that path at noon, and never eat mangoes that fall without wind now. She walks a different way, always at 10 in the morning, always with others, but sometimes she still finds a mango in her bag, ripe, soft, warm to the touch. And when she throws it away, it always returns the next day. They say if a Tikbalang gives you something, and you take it, it doesn't chase you, it just stays with you, watches you, waits until the right time, because not all monsters want your blood. Some only want to walk behind you forever. The Tikbalang on the bridge. There's an old hanging bridge between two villages in Laguna, ropes fraying, wood rotting below a ravine filled with mist. Even on sunny days it swings, even when no one crosses, creaks even when the air is still. And those who live nearby say never cross it at twilight. Marco didn't believe in tailies. He had just moved from the city to stay with his cousin and work in a nearby farm, loud, proud, always with his headphones on, always laughing at ghost stories. One evening after helping move sacks of rice, Marco decided to take the shortcut home alone, headphones in, music loud, the sun low, and red birds flying away in the opposite direction. As he stepped onto the bridge, the air changed, the warmth faded, his music started glitching, high-pitched tones bleeding through the bass like a voice humming under the track. He stopped, pulled off the headphones, and realized the creaking wasn't from the bridge. It was footsteps behind him, slow, heavy, not barefoot, not in shoes, but hooves, steady, rhythmic, and close. He turned around, no one there, just the mist rising from under the bridge and the vines hanging like fingers reaching up. He took a deep breath, kept walking faster. Then the creaking continued, matched his steps beat for beat until he stopped. And the sound didn't. He looked over the edge, saw only fog and trees swaying without wind. Then he heard it, a voice, soft, low, with a grin behind the words, "You walk like you've forgotten the old names." He turned and saw the figure at the far end of the bridge, tall, towering face of a horse, eyes glowing faintly, shoulders brushing the ropes, its limbs impossibly long, joints bent like a puppet held too loosely. It smiled. Marco froze, tried to move, but his legs wouldn't obey, like the air had thickened, wrapped around his knees. The figure began to walk toward him, slow, calm, patient. The ropes trembled, not from weight, but from something deeper, something that pulsed through the wood like blood in veins. And the boards under his feet began to stretch. Each step he took forward kept him in the same place. The Tikbalang reached him, bent its long neck, and whispered words he couldn't understand, then took a strand of his hair, tied it around his own wrist, and disappeared into the mist below. Marco woke up the next morning lying beside the bridge with mud on his hands, and no memory of how he got there. But a piece of rope was tied to his ankle, and 3 hoofprints circled him. He left the province that week, never spoke of it. But every bridge he crosses now creaks, even when still, and sometimes when he's alone. He finds strands of horsehair braided into his clothes. The old people say once a Tikbalang walks behind you, he leaves a mark, not to harm, not to haunt, but to follow forever. The Tikbalang who whistled back in the deep forests of Batangas, where the trees grow tall and tight together, where sunlight barely touches the soil, and the wind sounds like it's breathing. The old people always said never whistle while walking through the woods, never call out for someone who doesn't answer, because Sometimes something answers back. Lewis was a young forester hired to survey an untouched area, thick with vines, trees older than memory, trails unmarked, and sounds unfamiliar. He brought a compass, a radio, and an old bolo passed down from his grandfather, who once warned him, may mga hindi mo dapat ginugulo sa gubat lalo na kung hindi sila tao. At first the trail seemed calm. Birds sang above, monkeys cried from distant branches. But the deeper he went, the quieter it became, until his own footsteps felt too loud to break the silence. Lewis whistled, just once, a short tune, something his Lolo used to hum. And as the last note faded, something else whistled back, not an echo, not a bird, but something lower, slower, as if mocking him from behind the trees. He turned, nothing there. He called out, thinking maybe another forester had wandered into his area. No answer, just the wind changing direction, brushing past him like fingers made of cold air. He kept walking, marked a tree with his bolo, but after a few more steps, he saw the same tree again, same mark, same roots curling like claws. The compass spun slowly, never settling. Then came the scent of wet hair and earth, and the soft sound of hooves pressing into the mud. He looked up, and there it was between the trees, tall, shadowed, legs too long, chest rising slowly like it had been holding its breath, its face, a long snout, teeth hidden but smiling in silence, its eyes glowing not with light, but recognition. The Tikbalang tilted its head and whistled the same tune back slowly, then disappeared in a blink. Lewis turned and ran, but every direction led him back to the same clearing, where the same tree bled, the same mark, where the air never moved and the forest never blinked. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. He lost sense of time. He tried to pray, but his voice cracked like the wind was choking it. Then from the treetops, the Tikbalang dropped silently, hooves landing inches from his feet. It leaned forward, not to hurt, not to roar, just to stare and speak in a voice that sounded too human. Once you call to me, I always come. It reached out, not to grab, but to tie something around Lewis' wrist, a small braid made of horsehair and vine. And with one final breath, the forest released him. He stumbled out to the edge of the woods. Hours later, dirt on his face, scratches along his arms. Bolo missing. The other foresters said they'd been calling for him for 3 days now. He never whistles. He keeps his windows shut at night, and when he hears a tune in the distance that matches his old melody, he hides the braid tied in a drawer and whispers, Patientia na hindi ko alam ikopala ang nakarinig. The Tikbalang, who waited on the steps in a quiet barangay at the edge of Rizal, where the houses are built on hills and stairs lead down into thick forest, where fog climbs upward. Instead of falling, there is one house that no one visits, not because of ghosts or sickness, but because of what sits at the bottom of the stone steps after the rain. They say if you walk alone and step too softly, you might see him, the one with hooves that leave no sound, the one with hair like wet vines and eyes like deep wells that reflect your fears back at you. Anna was a young teacher who moved into that house unaware of its stories, unaware of what the locals refused to say too directly. She liked the quiet and the view of the trees, and how the mist rolled across her windows in the early morning. But she didn't like how her slippers were always wet even if it didn't rain, or how she heard hooves clip the stone steps at exactly 3 in the morning. She thought it was just animals, wild deer perhaps, or a neighbor's horse, until one night she stayed up reading and the power went out without wind, without thunder, just silence. Then the sound one hoof, then another slow measured. As if counting the steps, she peered through the glass and saw a shadow near the foot of the stairs, not moving, but breathing, shoulders rising like slow smoke, arms long reaching down to its knees, legs bent backward, and head too large, too low, too still. She shut the curtains, hid under her blanket, and waited. The steps never stopped, they just kept circling her house round and round until dawn, when the lights returned and the sound vanished. The next day, she asked her neighbor, an old woman who gave only a single warning: kung may naririnig, ka sa hagdan huwag mong tingnan, huwag mong pangalanan, huwag kang lalabas. But Anna was curious, and on the 4th night she left a small bowl of salt by the door and a prayer under her pillow, and waited again. The footsteps returned as always, and this time they stopped at the top step. Then came a knock, slow, light, almost polite, and a voice, dry, gentle like wind between wood. Anong pangalan mo. She didn't answer, didn't breathe. And the knocking stopped. In the morning she found the salt black and sticky like blood and hoofprints on the ceiling above her bed. The albulario was called, and when he arrived, he did not enter, just left an amulet on the door and whispered, minsan kapag pinansin mo siya hindi ka na niya, titigilan kasi, alam na niya kung saan ka nakatira. Anna left the next week, left everything behind, and never taught again, never walked down a flight of stairs without checking the bottom first. Now others say the Tikbalang still comes to that house, still counts the steps, still knocks softly asking for names. And when no one answers, he leaves something behind: a scent of burned hair, a broken shoe upside down, or a braid of horsehair tied tightly around the doorknob.
If you enjoyed this terrifying story, let us know in the comments below. Hit that like button to help us bring more cursed tales and dark legends to life. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, but warn them first. And if you dare, subscribe to this channel, because here in Pinoy Phobia, the horror never ends. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next cursed story, spine-chilling folklore, or true paranormal encounter from the shadows of the Philippines. Remember, some stories are meant to be heard, but others are meant to be warnings. Thank you for watching, and remember, whatever happens, don't look back.